Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And before we begin, if you haven't already, go check out all the links in our descriptions below, where you can go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and you can also check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter and also sign up for our expert picks, where for just $30 you will receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. I can promise you that's a deal you do not want to pass up. Well, have you recovered yet? Only one top 25 team lost, but Week 1 still brought its fair share of upsets and very close games to make this one of the more memorable and exciting Week 1s in recent memory. And that's exactly what we needed. We've been saying all season long that the 150th season of college football needed to have a different feel to it, and we expected it to have a different feel. And while every team in the top 10 took care of business, each team had a very slow start, and for many teams showed that there's still a lot that needs to be worked on and a lot of improvements that need to be made, and for some in a very short amount of time between Week 1 and Week 2. And we're going to recap everything that happened, combining Week 0 in with Week 1. And as you can see straight up from our predictions that we did in the summer, we went 46-9. So we went 83.6%. That's our winning percentage and kind of where we're going to start this 2019 season. As many of you know, our benchmark is always 76%. That's where it's been the past 2 seasons, and we're hoping to do even better than that this year. 84%, not a bad place to start. And I will say that out of those 9 losses, a lot of those came from big-time upsets or from teams that just could not hold on to a lead. Apparently, teams don't know how to hold on to fourth-quarter leads anymore. Out of our 9 losses, one of them was Hawaii's upset win over Arizona. That, of course, taking place back in Week 0. Another one was Nevada defeating Purdue. The Boilermakers led by 17 points before Nevada drilled a 56-yard field goal to complete their comeback and beat the Boilermakers 34-31. And if you remember last year, Purdue struggled mightily in the non-conference. I believe they started 0-3. And a lot of us out there were saying that they were the best 0-3 team out there because all of those losses were by narrow margins. Unfortunately for the Boilermakers, it looks like that could be another season for them again, as they have a very difficult non-conference schedule coming up. Games against Vanderbilt as well as TCU coming up for Purdue. Another one of our losses was Boise State's upset win over Florida State. That game, of course, getting moved to Tallahassee because of Hurricane Dorian. Of course, our thoughts and prayers with everybody that's going to be involved in that, anybody in the path of that. Make sure you are staying safe and just taking the necessary precautions because this is going to be one of the worst in history, as many have already predicted. But Boise State went up to Tallahassee despite the move, was down 18 points, and they beat the Seminoles 36-31. So Willie Taggart, abysmal start in Week 1, in year 1 going 5-7. Now another abysmal start to kick off his second year with the Seminoles, blowing an 18-point lead to Boise State. One of our upsets was Memphis over Ole Miss. We missed that game. That wasn't really one that I think a lot of people picked Memphis. That was kind of an upset call on our part. Didn't work out. Another one was us picking South Carolina over North Carolina. Mack Brown returns to coach for the first time since 2013 and leads the Tar Heels, a team that I did not have very high expectations for. I don't think many people had high expectations for, to an upset win over their rival in the Gamecocks, down by 11, ended up coming back and winning that game 24-20. Jake Bentley did not have himself the best of games, certainly not the quarterback that we were praising him to be in the offseason, and now he is out indefinitely with a broken foot. So things just continue to get worse for the Gamecocks. Losing North Carolina, they're facing the most difficult schedule in the entire nation, and now they lose their starting quarterback. Another loss was Wyoming's win over Missouri. That one was a huge upset. Kelly Bryant's debut getting spoiled for the Tigers. Everybody thought that Missouri had the chance to be undefeated going into their matchup against Georgia, a game that could potentially determine who wins the SEC East. And the Tigers go on the road and lay an egg against the Cowboys of Wyoming out in the Mountain West. Kelly Bryant did not have himself a bad performance, but Missouri's defense was once again their downfall, and many thought, including myself, that this would be one of the better defenses that Barry Odom has had going into, I believe, his 4th year now in Columbia. We predicted Virginia Tech to beat Boston College, but the Eagles took major care of the Hokies, so another poor start to the season for Justin Fuente and his Hokies, a disappointing 2018, not a great start to 2019. And then the two games that I think kind of caught everybody by surprise, or certainly made the most headlines in week 1. Georgia State's upset win over Tennessee. If anybody told you that they were picking Georgia State and they were not a Georgia State fan, they're lying. They're absolutely lying. Tennessee was a 25-point favorite going up against the Panthers, a team that went 2-10 in the Sun Belt last season, came on the road to Neyland Stadium, one of the most difficult places to play in my opinion, or at least maybe not anymore, and beat the Volunteers by 8 points. 25-point underdogs. Gave Tennessee their first home loss in a season opener since 1983. The SEC had won 82 straight games when favored by at least 25 points. Now that streak is over thanks to the Volunteers. Jeremy Pruitt, many thought that he was going to be rebuilding this Volunteers program, a season that many thought they could go bowling in 2019, including myself. And it was not the start they wanted. Georgia State, one of the biggest upsets of week 1 and maybe one of the biggest upsets of 2019. And then, of course, the biggest game of the entire week. It was our game of the week. It was the one that everybody had their eyes on. The only ranked versus ranked matchup in week 1. Number 11, Oregon, taking on number 16, Auburn. Now, I will say this, and this is not the conclusion of our recap. We have many games that we'll go through, but this is the one that I think caught everybody's eye. I don't believe that Auburn necessarily won this game. Oregon lost this game very similar to the way that they lost the Stanford game last year. Oregon was up 21-6 in the third quarter and allowed Auburn to shut them out the rest of the way. But if you look at the plays, the key plays that could have put this game away quickly for the Ducks, you'll understand why I believe that Oregon truly lost this game and Auburn necessarily did not win it. Yes, it's a win in the books for them. It's a huge win for Gus Malzahn. And do I believe that Auburn deserved to win? Absolutely. But let's think about this. They were up 21-6 late third quarter. Back in the first quarter, they had the ball inside the 5-yard line of Auburn. They had a chance to score a touchdown, went right through the hands of one of their wide receivers. Could have gone up 14-0 there. Instead, chose to go for the field goal, missed that field goal. So they missed a chance to go up at least 14, if not 10, in that late first quarter. Then in the second quarter, they had a huge punt return that put them inside the 10-yard line of Auburn. So a chance to go up 21-3 against the Tigers. The very next play, they fumbled the ball. Auburn returned it all the way down inside Oregon's 5. Luckily for the Ducks, they held the Tigers to a field goal in that game. Ultimately, it did not matter. The Tigers still walked away with the win. But imagine, had Oregon gone up 21-3 there, the game could have ended right then. And then, of course, late in the fourth quarter, Oregon opting to go for it just right on the other side of the 50-yard line. But everybody in the stadium knew that they were going to hand the ball off to the left side and try to get the first down. It was just 4th and 1. But everybody in that stadium knew it was going to happen. Everybody in the nation, I think, knew that Oregon was going to run this ball. And what a horrible coaching decision by Mario Cristobal to run the ball on the left side against one of the best defensive lines in the entire nation. Auburn stuffed them there. Yes, they did not score off of that turnover on downs, but had Oregon maybe chosen a better play or maybe pinned them deep, could have run a little more time off the clock, gotten better field position, could have won this game. So Oregon was very mistake-prone in this game. Had a great 3 quarters, but you've got to play the entire 60 minutes. You have to play the entire 4 quarters. And for many, the legend of Bo Nix was born in this Auburn and Oregon game. But keep in mind that Bo Nix did not have the best of performances in this game against the Ducks. Yes, he will forever be known in this game by throwing the game-winning touchdown pass with just 9 seconds remaining. But Bo Nix only went 13 for 31, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So it was not the best performance, but you can't expect greatness out of a freshman quarterback. He got the job done and proved, in my opinion, that he is the right man for Gus Malzahn's offense. Everybody was going to be mistake-prone in week 1. We saw that from some of the best teams in the nation. We saw that from some of the best players in the nation. You can't say it's going to be any different for Bo Nix, who was making his first career start as a freshman quarterback at a neutral site against the number 11 team in the country. He got the job done. Gus Malzahn got his name off the hot seat just for a little bit. Can Auburn continue the success over the course of the season and maybe contend for an SEC title, much like they did 2 seasons ago? They have a tough schedule, but this feels like another one of those years for the Auburn Tigers. As you can see, against the spread, we went 6-4 this week, and that's another reason we want to stress that you sign up for our expert picks. Now, we aren't too happy with 60%, but of course that is well above 50%. And for some people, it's about 52.4, 52.1, somewhere around there is where you break even. Regardless, we are still way above that. So we went 6-4. It could have been much better had Oregon pulled out the win. Had Auburn just kicked a field goal, we would have covered in that game. We were unable to do that because Auburn went for the touchdown to win. It could have been a little bit worse, as we got very lucky with Stanford covering against Northwestern by recovering that fumble in the end zone, which is about 20 seconds remaining in the game. Had they not recovered that, had it been a safety, we would not have covered. Had that fumble never happened, we would not have covered. But Stanford won by 10. The spread 6.5 in favor of the Cardinals. So we got very lucky there. 6-4 against the spread in week 1. We're going to have an even better week 2. So if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for those expert picks. We kind of highlighted some of the biggest games of week 1 by far. We also want to throw out the mention that Iowa State, the number 21 team in the country, survived Northern Iowa 29-26 and 3 overtimes. Well, that was an extremely shocking game. Only the second team in history to go to overtime against an FCS opponent, ranked team, to go to overtime against an FCS opponent. The other, of course, being Auburn back in 2015 when they survived Jacksonville State. And then, of course, to close out week 1, we saw a dominant performance out of Jalen Hurts with over 500 yards of total offense in their 49-31 victory over Houston. It's a huge win for Oklahoma against a dominant Cougars team who will have a dominant offense under Dana Holgorsen, but can they contend in the American Athletic? And then, of course, Louisville showed major signs of improvement in just the first game under Scott Satterfield. Were unable to get the win over Notre Dame, who came on the road and defeated the Cardinals 35-17. Well, this Louisville team had a drastic turnaround in less than a year after the train wreck that Bobby Petrino left at Louisville. Scott Satterfield has already righted the ship, and our 2-10 prediction may be a little off for the Cardinals this season. I expect them to win a few more games than what we predicted. So, of course, you're probably wondering now, after we've kind of highlighted all of these games here, we don't do teams trending up or trending down until after week 3. We got to give these teams times to rack up some wins and to really show us what they're made of, because teams tend to start slow and have poor performances in week 1. If they continue to do that, we know they're not going to be a very good team. I mean, people can show drastic signs of improvement in a span of a week. But we do have the Mountain West trending up and the SEC trending down. And you might be wondering, why that is. Well, we'll start with the SEC trending down, and that's because of the horrible performances that we saw across the board outside of the powerhouses like Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M, and now Auburn with that that shocking win over Oregon. I wouldn't say it was dominant, but a good win over Oregon. Ole Miss, as we mentioned, fell to Memphis 15-10 behind a poor offensive performance from the Rebels. Tennessee, as we mentioned, had one of the biggest upsets of week 1, losing to Georgia State at home. South Carolina, another big upset, falling to North Carolina. Missouri, falling to Wyoming, as we mentioned. A very poor start for the Kelly Bryant era and the Tigers, a team that had very high hopes in 2019. And then you look at other teams in the SEC like Arkansas, who survived Portland State out of the FCS just 20-13. Or maybe even Kentucky, who struggled for the majority of the game against Toledo before pulling away and winning by 14. Or even Mississippi State, who struggled most of the game against Louisiana out of the Sun Belt before finally winning by 10 points, kicking a field goal to get up by double digits with about a minute left in the game. So some poor performances out of the SEC, a conference that prides itself on being the best in the nation. It certainly did not look that way in week 1. Now, things can change. Of course, you've got your perennial powers, the guys that are going to be contending for a playoff spot in SEC titles, the teams that we mentioned at the beginning. But the rest of the SEC did not look the part. And in my opinion, you can't call yourself the best conference in the nation if only a couple of your members show up. Now, the Mountain West, on the other hand, their members did show up in week 1. They showed up big time. They went 9-3 in week 1, combined as a conference. 2 of their losses out of their 3 were very close ones. It could have been much better for the Mountain West. Utah State fell to Wake Forest on the road in the final seconds. We saw Fresno State give USC a tough test. Of course, unfortunately for USC, JT Daniels will be out for the season, but Fresno State nearly going on the road to the Coliseum and upsetting the Trojans. We saw Nevada take care of Purdue. We saw Boise State defeat Florida State, as we mentioned. We saw Hawaii back in week 0 defeat Arizona. And then, of course, Wyoming defeating Missouri. So 4 victories over Power 5 opponents for the Mountain West. Take these guys seriously, because these guys could be competing for a spot in a New Year's Six bowl game. Right now it's Boise State as the front runner in the Mountain West, but their performance, not just against bad schools, but against Power 5 opponents, all Power 5 opponents that had high expectations in 2019, teams that should have improved in 2019, ended those hopes very, very quickly. So look out for the Mountain West, and unfortunately for the SEC, they are on the decline, at least for right now. Of course, things can change as shortly in a week, as short of time as a week. So make sure you keep your eyes out for that. But those are the teams that we have trending up and trending down right now. Our official teams and our Heisman watch will, of course, come out after week 3. And, of course, I know everybody looks forward to that, including myself. And then finally, the last thing that we want to address, it's not up here on the board, but we had our ESPN College Pick'em League. And I personally did not have the best of performances in week 1. A lot of those games on the ESPN College Pick'em were some of our losses that we had up here, out of our 9 out of the 55. But we have a 3-way tie for first after week 1. Eli Rowland, what a college, and Alex Kidd Awesome, all getting 8 out of the 10 games correct in week 1. They are all tied for first place in our ESPN College Pick'em League. You cannot, unfortunately, join our league anymore. I mean, kind of defeats the purpose now that the season has already started, but we're going to have a lot more competition and more shout-outs as the season goes on for those of you that continue to do well and make your picks throughout the rest of 2019. So week 1, one of the more exciting week 1s I think we've had in recent memory. Some big-time upsets, maybe not against ranked opponents, but against teams you did not expect to lose, and 4 teams that won those games, teams that you did not expect much out of in 2019. And that's exactly the start that we needed in 2019, and we're hoping for an even better week 2. So once again, 46-9 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Sign up for the expert picks. You're not going to want to miss out on any of those or any more picks that we have coming out over the course of this season. So guys, once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe. Go check out the website, thegridironexpert.com. Go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at gridironexpert. And of course, continue to watch us here on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.